Hello, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Today we have another crossbody bag project. It'll go over your shoulder and sit on your hip if that's where you want it. And this one's going to be a gift for Mum for Mother's Day. Mother's Day is coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So I figured I'd make her something with cats. This is the fabric that we're going to be using today, and this is what I'll be using for the lining. I can't show you the finished bag yet because we still have to make it. So come along and I'll show you how we make this crossbody sling bag. It's going to have lots of pockets in there and a nice long shoulder strap as well. When I make these bags, I use bag hardware, so it'll have D-rings and swivel clips and things on there. But I will show you a way to do this bag without having to use any hardware at all. So when we get to that, I'll let you know what to do instead. Let's get to it. These are all the things that we're going to be using for this bag, and I'll pop the cutting instructions up on the screen in a few seconds. I did mention that I'm using bag hardware, but you can make this bag without any of this hardware at all. So if you don't have it or you don't want to use it, you can make the bag without having to use any of this. But if you do have them, I've got a lobster clip, an adjustable slider and D-rings. We want two of those, and one of those. I'm using continuous zips. We'll be putting 3 of them into this bag, one on the outside, one at the top and one on the inside. For the handles, I'm using this strapping or webbing. It's 1 inch wide or 2.5 centimeters. It's really strong stuff. I love using this for all of my handles. Saves a lot of time. And with the zips, of course, you need some sliders. And these are the 2 fabric pieces that I'm going to be using for this bag. This will be the main fabric, the one with the cats on it, and this mustard colour will be the lining for the pockets as well as the inside of the bag. So here's what you need. The other products that I'll be using are my stabilisers. This one here is a lightweight fleecy stabiliser. This one's called Parlan, but you can use Matilda's Own or Palin or whatever products you can find. There's not much thickness to it at all. As I said, this one's called Parlan. It's a really nice fusible stabiliser. I'll be putting that onto my cat fabric. This one here is a cotton interfacing. It's fusible as well. If you don't have that, you can use a regular dressmaker's interfacing as well. I'm using that for the lining of the inside of the bag because we're attaching a pocket to it. I just want to give it more stability. And you'll also need stabiliser for your bag handles. I changed my mind about this. I've decided I'm actually going to make my handles instead. So if you don't want to make them, you can use some webbing or strapping. But I'm actually going to make my handles out of the cat fabric. If you're going to be making your own shoulder straps, then you'll need some stabiliser for that as well. All right, here's the materials list. Okay, we have our 2 zips. Now on this bag I want to put tabs at both ends of the zip. I've got my zipper cut evenly at one end. Open it out a little. Have the curved edge facing me. Sit that over one end. Pop the other end in and line up those edges along the top there. You'll hear a click when the teeth line up. And then you can close your zip. And if that's still straight across here, then you should have an even amount of zipper coil on both sides there. You don't want to have it kinked over on one side. With both our sliders in position, we can create our tabs. If you grab the fabric that you have for your handles, that's 3.5 inches wide, measure the width of your zipper tape. Mine is about 1.25 inches or almost 3.5 centimeters. I'm going to cut 4 strips. And we want to put that on the end of our zips. Double check that your zips are at 11.5 inches. Fold your fabric in half with the right sides facing. Place the end of your zipper tape right over the centre of your fabric. And do that for both ends. And it's at this point you want to make sure you've remembered to put your zip sliders on because you'll be in trouble if you forget. done that many times. Okay, now that I've got the tabs on the end of the zips, I'm going to take this to the machine, and all I'll do is sew about 1/4 inch along the edge there, and I'll double stitch or triple stitch over the section where the zipper coil is. I'll be right back. Now that our zipper tabs are done, all you need to do is push the fabric away from the zip. You've got the right side facing up and it's completely encased, so there's no raw edges of your zip showing anywhere, and when you put the lining on, it doesn't matter that it's not straight, it'll be completely covered. Now that we have our tabs on, we want to fold the zip in half and bring the ends together where the tab meets the zip and mark the centre. We'll do that on both zips. Set those aside for the moment. Before we stabilise the fabric for our handles, what you want to do is open it out, place one end with the right side faced up, line up the other one so that you have the pattern facing the same way if you've got a patterned fabric. Take this and place that over the top of this one. So all you're doing is going from here over here. And if I overlap this a little bit, you'll be able to see how to line it up. You can see the intersection here and down here. And you want to mark a line going from one corner to the next. That will become our stitching line. Place a couple of pins in your fabric here, and I'll take this to the machine now and I'll just sew straight over that yellow line. So I've stitched that in place. You can see the two pieces of fabric on the diagonal here. Now I've had a problem with my thread on this, but when you open this out and spread the fabric apart, you should have the bottom edge lined up straight and this top edge should be lined up straight as well. I've got the wrong thread in my machine at the moment for this, but normally it will sit nice and straight. Now because we're folding the edges in, it's really not going to be noticed. Press that seam, press that open, and once you've done that, bring those seams together again and we can trim off the excess. You want to have about 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold that back over, press that seam open again. By joining your fabric pieces together like this, you're distributing the bulk of that seam right across that piece of fabric. So that means you don't have one really chunky seam going straight down. It's kind of wrapped around the handle. It'll provide a little bit of extra strength too. We need to stabilise our shoulder strap fabric, and it will also be the fabric that we use for the tabs for our shoulder strap to connect to. We need to stabilise it, and we do have a few options. So it's up to you whether you want to have a padded feel to your shoulder strap or whether you just want to have something nice and crisp, or if you just basically want to fuse it together and have just a really lightweight product in there. This is the Parlan that I've used for the outer bag. If you want a nice soft padded shoulder strap, cut a long strip at 1 3/4 inch or 4.5 centimeters and place that to the center of your fabric and fuse that in place all the way down the entire strip. Once you've done that, you'll fold the edges over and then fold those edges over, and you've got a nice soft shoulder strap. The other option is to use an interfacing like what you use in dressmaking. Place that over the center of your fabric exactly like you would with a fleecy. Fuse that in place, then you'll fold the edges over, fold that over again, and that sits a little bit more crisply than this one here that will be nice and soft. I have this double-sided fusible tape and I've got so much of it I'd like to use it up. So what I plan to do with this one is I'll fold my fabric in half all the way along the entire length, fold the raw edges in, and once I've done that and marked a crease all the way along, and I'll press that, I'll place my double-sided fusible onto the center of my fabric fold the layers over, fold all that over again, take it back to the iron and iron it all in place so that folds my edges under, and it gives me a really lightweight fusible stabilizer for the inside of the handle, so it's still nice and soft, but it doesn't have any thickness to it. It's up to you whether you want a nice soft padded shoulder strap, something firm, or just something with a little bit of stability in it. And I think this will be enough for my needs. So whichever way you want to go and do that, apply your stabilizer to that whole strap. Before you do any fusing though, you want to cut off about 20 centimeters or 8 inches from one end of your shoulder fabric. So once you've cut off that small section, you'll apply your stabilizer to both pieces in the same way. Now with your long piece, before you attach any stabilizer, just take the short end and fold it in on both ends. Then you can apply your stabilizer underneath that folded section, and you'll have nice neat edges when you come to finish your shoulder strap. So that'll cover up any raw edges that you've got there. So you do that at both ends of the shoulder strap, but you don't need to do it for the short piece. Now that we have folded the raw edges in on our shoulder strap and on our tabs, with our long strap we want to sew down both long edges and both short edges, and with this shorter one here, all you need to do is sew down both long edges. I'll start by closing up the end, and then I'll sew down the side that has the opening first. And rather than coming down the short edge and then going back along the other side, I'm going to start at the same end where I began. And the reason for that is that you can see how this is already starting to curl. If I come back from the other side, it's going to twist the handle even more. I just use the other side of my presser foot and sew along the other side. And then sew up the end. We can set our handles and the fabric for the tabs aside for the time being. I've gone and fused the stabilizer to the back of the outer fabric, so this one here is using the fleecy. So I've fused that to the back of both of my outer fabrics. My lining pieces have the lighter weight cotton interfacing on those, and the handles have been done however you like them to be done. This is the top edge of my fabric here. From there I'm going to measure 6.5 centimeters or 2.5 inches from the top. I'll place my 2.5 inch line on the top edge of my fabric, and I've just made this mark just to show you whereabouts we're going to be cutting across this fabric. So you can mark the line and cut it with scissors, or if you have a rotary cutter and a cutting mat, you can just cut straight across. Now that that's been cut, what we need to do is put a zip in. Let's grab one of our zips, fold the bottom piece of fabric in half and mark the centre, and then you'll place your zip over the top of your fabric. Now when you're placing your zip down, you need to have the curved edge facing your left, and then we'll turn that over and we'll line up the centre with the centre of the fabric. If you use pins or clips, you can secure that in place, or you can baste it as well. As usual, I'll be using my double-sided tape. This one here doesn't gum up the needles. I'll line up those centre markings. And then I'll run another strip over the top. And I'll place my lining right side down, so I've got the printed sides facing each other. And you want to make sure that your lining is the same width as your outer fabric. Now you don't need to worry about this lining piece being a lot longer than the outer fabric, because this is the pocket, it will come up shortly. As long as it's the same width, everything's going to be fine. Now that that's attached, we'll take this to the machine and we'll put our zipper foot on and stitch right across there. Once we've sewn that, we'll pop the lining to the back of the outer fabric and we'll top stitch. Now I've shown you plenty of videos how to put the metal tags on, so I've put my metal tag on, and what I'm going to do also, and this was a suggestion from a viewer some time back, she suggested I put another piece of stabilizer or something over the back of that metal washer to help protect my lining fabric from potentially wearing out because of the rubbing due to the metal tabs or even the washer. So I will fuse a small piece of that Parlan onto the back of that, and that will help protect my lining fabric. Finger press the lining away from the zip. I don't usually start top stitching from the very end, but I will in this bag. And I should have increased my stitch length. Normally I'll do a stitch length of 3 and increase my stitch length to about 3.8 or 4. I forgot to do that, so I'm just going to have a smaller stitch length on this. That won't matter as long as it doesn't cause any puckers. I'm also using a cream coloured contrast thread. Now we can attach our top section of the zip. Turn that upside down. We'll run some tape along that and we'll line that up over the top of our zip and secure that in place. Flip it over and run some more tape along the top edge, and we'll take the bottom of our pocket lining and bring that up and secure that as well. Let's sew that closed. Once that's done, we can top stitch this short piece. There won't be any pocket lining that needs to go to the back of the top, so just smooth that out nicely and top stitch. Now that we've got our zip finished here, you can see that little opening, that little pocket just there. I have the 2 pocket pieces for the inside of the bag, and what I've also done is prepared the zip in exactly the same way that we did for the outer part of the bag. And this zip has been cut at 7.5 inches, and then the tabs have been placed on the end. Again, place the curved edge facing to the left and place your zip evenly across that fabric. And then we'll place the lining with the 2 right sides facing, line it up along the side and then along the top edge. We can take that to the machine and we'll sew all the way down there. Once you've done that, open it out and top stitch. Alright, we've got the zip and the lining in place down here. Let's put some double-sided tape to the other end of the fabric. I'll Let's move that lining out of the way. Bring the zip up to meet the other end. And then I'll pop some more tape on the other end of the lining. And I'll bring the lining up to meet the top of the zip. And once again, I will go and sew that in place, and then I'll top stitch. Once you've sewn that zip in place, you've got to turn the tube around so that you have the outer fabric on the inside and the lining faced outward. This is the row I've already top stitched, and this is a little bit fiddly here, but we need to get in and top stitch this section here, but we've got to be able to start at the outside edge. So if you raise your foot and put your fabric underneath and open the zip as far as you can, so place your fabric underneath and we can top stitch from here. And just keep moving your fabric forward, and the other piece will stay out of the way as you sew. When you get to the other end, you've just got to move that zip out of the way. You can see that little opening at the end there, and continue on. We've made a little tube here of our internal pocket. What you want to do now is move the zip so that it sits about 2.5 centimetres or 1 inch from the top edge. So we've got 1 inch from the edge of the fabric at the top here, and we'll pop a pin in at both ends. And what we need to do is turn the lining and the outer inside out so that you can see the wrong side of both pieces of fabric. So reposition your pins if you need to, and have the lining sitting nice and flat with that folded edge at the top here. Flip that over, just finger press that down, grab your cat fabric and bring that down to meet up with the bottom of your lining and the top section of your lining as well. So currently we've got our cats inside out, and we have our lining fabric both inside out. The zip is underneath here. So I've clipped this side together. We're going to sew from the top all the way down. So from the top, come down to here, back stitch, leave an opening here about 3 or 4 fingers, and then back stitch here to the end. Throughout the rest of the project I've got a 1 centimetre seam allowance, but here I'm going to make it a little bit less. I'll probably do about 6 mil or 1/4 inch. So that's all the layers sewn together on that side, and we'll do the same on this side, remembering to leave an opening. And then come back up near the top. Okay, now we need to turn this the right way around, and we also need to clip our corners. I'll trim that close to the corner. And this end here where I've got an opening, I want to finger press that seam, and I'll do the same on the other side. And we've got 2 openings here. We've got one on the lining and we've got one on the outer. We could have easily gone and closed the lining separately, but I didn't think of that. Let's go into the outer fabric or the cat fabric. Once you've poked out your corners and you're happy with how that looks, the lining fabric that you've got here, you want to fold those edges under so that they fold over to the back of the cat fabric, and that will prevent any raw edges from showing up on the inside of the pocket. Not that it really matters because you're going to be top stitching in a minute anyway. So the lining fabric has been folded to the back of the pocket section, and then the cat fabric has been folded as you normally would when you're closing up a pocket. I'll clip that in place for now, but what I'm going to do is a top stitch right along the top edge of the pocket. We can take our lining fabric and we'll fold that in half. We can just mark a crease there. We'll mark the centre right here. We want to place this pocket over the lining. Fold that in half, and I've got the centre marked here, and we'll place that over the centre we've already marked. Really, it's up to you where you'd like to position this, but we're going to have curved edges on the bottom of our bag, so we don't want to go too far down. And I've placed the top edge of my pocket 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimetres from the top edge of the fabric, and that section has already been top stitched. And what I want to do is make a double pocket. So here we're going to have a pocket next to the lining, but then we're also going to have the zippered pocket. So it becomes a double pocket. Grab some pins and we can pin that pocket in place. And now we'll go back to the machine. We're going to sew down here, along the bottom and along the side to the top again. And you don't need to sew this top section. You want to reinforce this top corner here as well. So I'll backstitch a few times just to make sure that that's nice and secure. Okay, I haven't done that very straight, have I? Perhaps if we look at it like that, it'll be just fine. Aside from the fact that Mum's probably watching this video right now, she's not even going to know this pocket's crooked. Sorry, Mum. So here we go. We've got a nice little pocket just along here, and then you've got a nice secure pocket in here as well. And with that fabric stabilised, your pocket's going to sit there nice and firmly. Now we can get back to this outer fabric here. We need to put a zip in at the top, but we also need to put our tabs in for our shoulder strap. So this short piece here that we cut off separately earlier, we're going to cut off 2 pieces that are 3 inches or 8 centimetres in length. I've got a couple of D-rings here, and we need to place a D-ring over each one of these tabs, and we'll place one on the front of the bag and another one on the back of the bag. I'll be using D-rings, a lobster clasp and an adjustable slide. So if you don't have bag hardware, you can attach your shoulder strap straight to your bag, but you'll need to get the size adjustment right for yourself first. Before we go and attach our shoulder strap and the next zip, we want to just double check that the sizing of the front and back of the bag are the same, and also our lining fabric. So grab your front fabric, place that over the top of your back fabric and line that up, and just see if there's any size difference. And if there is, you can trim that back. Now, the reason that will happen is because your seam allowance may vary, and also the stitching line that you have on your zip. I've just trimmed back a very small amount of fabric from the lining and the back piece of fabric, and now everything is the same size. So what we can do here, take your tab and place that 1.5 inches or 4 centimetres from the outside edge, and clip that in place. Grab the back of your bag, put a D-ring over your tab, and we'll place this tab the same distance from the left edge. So we've got the back and front tabs the same distance from the left edge. If we take the front of the bag, place that face down, and the back of the bag, and have that faced up, when you've got your shoulder strap on, you've got one tab at the back and one at the front, and they're on opposite sides. I'll just do a very quick stitch right across the top edge of both of those to secure those in place. Okay, I've sewn those little tabs on. Now we're ready to put the zip across the top. Now I mentioned earlier, if you don't have bag hardware or you choose not to put it on at all, then grab your full length strap, measure it across your shoulder and across your body and cut it to the length that you'd like it to be. And what you'll do, instead of placing these tabs down, you'll take your strap, let's put this together like this so we've got the front and the back. You'll take your shoulder strap, clip it in place in the same position, making sure that your strap isn't twisted. Bring it around to the other side and clip that in place there. So you've got the bag connected by a really long shoulder strap. So you don't have to use this hardware at all. And if you are connecting your shoulder strap this way without the hardware, you don't have to fold the edges over either, just leave them raw. So that's your other option if you don't want to use any hardware or don't have any. Now we're ready to put our zip in, and we're going to use the other zip that we prepared earlier. We'll run some tape along the top edge. We'll do that on both pieces. Remove that tape and find your zip. And remember that we need to have the curved edge. You want that the same as the one on this zip. Flip the zip upside down. Line up the center marking with the center marking on your fabric. Grab some more tape, and we want to grab the lining piece that doesn't have a pocket on it. So that's this one here. Line up the side seam and the center and the top, and we can go and sew that in place. I'm coming up to the area where the tab is, so I'm going to go over that again. And now we can top stitch. I have my lining fabric sitting to the back of my main and have this tab facing above the zip. Okay, the top zip is in place now. I might just mention, if you're using a big name tag like this and there's not enough room for your sewing machine foot to go past, you can put your label on now. You've still got your outer fabric and your lining fabric separated. So all you would need to do is separate the fabric and pop your tag in. That way it's not going to cause any problems with the thickness of your sewing machine foot. Take the fabric for the back of your bag and we'll place the zip over the top of that, and this tab now needs to be moved out of the way. I'll just pop a pin in there to keep the tab and the D-ring faced down. Line up the centre with the centre on the back, and we can grab our other lining piece and have that pocket face down and line up the centre again. And we can sew that in place and then top stitch. And now we can do the last row of top stitching. Once again, I've got the lining fabric sitting right behind the outer fabric. And remember to keep the tab over the zip. And there we have the top of our zip put into our bag. And you've got one tab on each side. Several people have asked me why we put the tabs on opposite sides. And the reason for that is, if you have your tab, say for example, on the back side, when it's resting against your body, if you have both tabs against the back and you open your bag out, it can have a tendency to lean forward depending on the weight that you've got in there. And same if you put the tab on the front. By having your tabs on either side, you're controlling that against your body, so it can't lean one way or the other way because those shoulder straps are keeping everything in place. At this point here, we want to make sure the top zip is open. And if you don't open that now, you might have a few problems turning your bag the right way around later. Now we're going to work on the corners, and rather than having boxed corners, I'm going to make rounded corners. So I've placed the lining and the outer together. I'm going to mark 2.5 inches or 6 centimetres from the outside edge and the bottom edge. We'll do that on both sides. And we'll also do that at the other end. Whether you want to use a cup or a plate, grab anything that's got a curved edge to it. And we'll repeat that for all 4 sides. Just take the lining piece for now and bring this edge over to this edge. You'll line up those marks that you've made. Press a crease. So you want that nice and straight across there. And this is the centre that we've creased. From there we're going to come out 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimetres. And on either side of this centre line we're going to measure 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. And then we can connect those dots. And cut that out. So rather than doing every corner individually, you can fold the lining in half and cut that curve out. And cut out your dart. Then you can bring both lining pieces together, line them up, and just cut out that curve and the wedge. So we'll do that on the lining and we'll do that on the outer fabric as well. Once I've done the lining pieces, I'll just take that lining and lay that over the top of my outer fabric and cut those out as well. Alright, these corners are now ready to sew up. So all you need to do is take the wedge, place that right side together and sew with your seam allowance right across there. And you'll do that on all corners of your lining and all corners of your outer fabric. So I've shown you how to create your curve so you can have a nice bit of depth to your bag at the base. I've decided though that my wedge isn't big enough. I actually want to have a little bit more room at the bottom. So to fix that, I'm going to make my wedges a little bit longer. So where I made them 2 centimetres or 3/8 of an inch, I'm going to increase that to 1 inch. So I'm just adding an extra 1/4 of an inch to that tip. And then using the same end at the bottom, I'll readjust that line. And that'll just give me an extra 1/4 of an inch on each side of the bag across the width of the base. And I'll cut that out. So it's just a tiny little bit, but it will make a little bit of a difference. So I'll do that on all of the fabric pieces. Then we can close up our darts. I've clipped the triangles together on each of those darts, and you'll see when we sew this up, this will give the bag a nice curve at the bottom, and it'll give it a little bit of width as well. So we'll go and sew all of these up. So I'll line up the curved edge, and I'm just going to sew straight down the straight edge of those darts. And that's it there. Now Now we'll do the rest. All right, these curved corners are finished and are looking pretty good. So if you turn it the right way out, you can see that nice curved shape taking place there. We can start closing up the bag now. I just noticed that when putting the back fabric on, I hadn't lined my zip up properly with a side seam. I shouldn't have rushed, but I can cut these tabs off now, and all I'm going to do is cut across here and even that out a little bit. My seam allowance is big enough that it will make that inconspicuous anyway. All right, let's close this up. Take your outer fabric and separate that from your lining. And let's start with the lining first. So we've got our darts here, and we're going to line those up. Rather than splitting it at the end and opening it out, I'm going to have them going in opposite directions. So this one here can go to my left, this dart can go to my right. By making them go in opposing directions, it actually evens out that stitching line, it locks it in place, makes it much easier to sew. Repeat that for the other side. I'll pop this one to the inside and the other one to the outside. As long as they go in opposite directions, it doesn't matter which side they face. We'll do the same on the outer fabric. This one I'll push to my right and that side I'll push to my left. So you can see on the lining here, I've pushed my dart to the centre, and on the outer fabric, I've pushed my dart out for this side. When they come together inside the bag, you'll have one dart going that way and the other dart going the other way, and that will help that sit a little bit better. Likewise, if I turn that around the other way, I have the dart on the outer fabric pointing to the centre and the dart on the lining facing outward. And again, when the bag comes together, the bulk of the fabric will be distributed more evenly. Won't hurt anything if you don't do that, but it's just one of those things that I like to do. Line up the side edge where the zip is. Okay, this has been clipped together all the way around, and rather than leaving an opening in the bottom of the lining, I'm going to leave my opening on the side of the lining, and I've got quite a big span there to turn everything the right way around. So I'll start here with a back stitch, go forward, back and forward, all the way around, forward, back and forward, keep on going till I get here, do a back stitch, and then we can clip our curves. As I come to the curve, I'm just going to slow down. When I sew over the intersection where the dart is, I'll go back and forward again. All right, that is finished now, and all we need to do is clip our curves and turn this the right way around. And I've bought myself some new pinking shears. So rather than having to put lots of little wedges in or clip close to the edge, I'll see how these new ones go. I've got 3 pair and they're all blunt. Yeah, they're a bit stiff for my liking. I think I'll stick to my tried and true technique. I'm just going to cut really close to the edge here. And then we can turn this the right way around. I'll finger press that side seam open just to set a crease, and that way I can close it up more easily. And now we can turn it the right way around. Okay, now that that's all pressed, if you've put your shoulder strap on without any hardware, then your bag is completely finished. I haven't, because I'm using these little tabs and the D-rings. We need to make our adjustable shoulder strap. Let's set the bag aside. We'll have a look at that later. Grab your adjustable slider and one of your lobster clips and one end of your bag handle. The first thing you'll do is take your lobster clip, pop that on. It doesn't matter if it's faced up or down because you can move that. Then take the end of your handle, place it through the bottom of your adjustable slide, bring the end in and over the centre, and that's in place there. And then you can sew this closed. I'll pop a clip in place at the moment. I don't like to sew these things closed until I know that I've got it right. From here, we can bring this clip just around to the back, and with your fabric nice and straight, grab the other end and bring that up and over the centre and through the back. And there you've got one end of your clip in place. We've got this here that still needs to be sewn, and then we'll take the other lobster clasp and pop that on as well. I've got the top side here faced up, fold that across, and I'll clip that in place and just make sure everything's going to sit properly. So from here, the adjustable section of the handle is right, and I'll sew that and come back around and everything lines up nicely. So I have the folded edge sitting underneath here, and I have the folded edge sitting in between the layers here. We can take that to the machine now and sew it in place. And whilst I'm at the machine, the last thing we need to do is close up the side of the bag, fold the raw edges in underneath and close it up. And now that our handles are secure, we can attach that to our tabs. So we've got our completely adjustable handle. You can shorten it or lengthen it as much as you like. And we have a cute little cat bag for Mum. Let's have a look inside. So the front pocket here, you've got a huge amount of space in here. So we've got our zippered pocket in here, and then we've got our patch pocket all done in one piece, and lots of room on the inside. So how did you like that bag? It's a good size, much bigger than my normal crossbody bags, and lots more pockets as well. So we've got a really long adjustable strap there, so it'll sit across your shoulder and down beside your hip. And when I said earlier, the reason why I put these tabs on separate sides is that when this bag is open, you might walk around with the top zip open, and if you don't have a tab at the front to stop it from falling away from you, anybody could easily come in and reach their hand in and take whatever they wanted out of the bag. By having the shoulder strap on the outside as well as the inside, you're preventing that bag from folding out. Only prevents it a little bit, but every little bit helps, doesn't it? So if I'm going to have handles like this at the top, this is where I do like to put them. Plus it's also a lot easier to put them in on either side than it is on the ends as well. Much easier to sew. Now those that have been watching my videos for some time and the way I insert my zipper tabs at the top of my bags, you may have noticed that I actually stitched all the way from one end to the next when I did the top stitching. It's not something that I usually do, and I find that if I only top stitch from one end of the zip to the next, I have more control over what happens on the corners here. This is very difficult for you to see because I've worked with black fabric, but I haven't got nice square corners here. It doesn't help that I'm wearing a black top either, but at least it makes my product look good, right? It had been such a long time since I've sewn from one end to the next that I wanted to see what happened. I'd forgotten, and what's happened is that it's kind of pinched the corners in on both ends. I don't like that. I like them to sit more flat. I'm going to stick with my method of sewing from one end of the zip to the next when I do the top stitching. I don't need to go all the way to the end. But each to their own, we all do what works for us, right? So we've got a nice big pocket on the inside there. If you don't want that pocket hanging down like that, then top stitch all the way around as we did on the three sides. But I like that it's got that extra pocket on the top, and then you've got that zippered pocket here to prevent anything from falling out. It's nice and deep too, and you've got a good sized pocket in the front as well. I'm just going to go and grab my iPad and we'll see how that fits in this bag. I reckon it'll fit in here. So there's my iPad. I think this is the first one that ever came out. It's very old. But that actually fits in there really well. So you've still got enough room at the top here for the iPad, and the pocket at the front will be a great place to put your chargers and cords. So it's not just a crossbody bag, it's also a notepad or iPad bag. Hopefully Mum will like this bag. She should. She's a cat lady. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.